What's up guys, Justin here with TheSketchUpEssentials.com. So as a lot of you know, 3D Basecamp is just around the corner, and with that comes a lot of graphics that SketchUp is creating in this kind of unique looking style. Well, I thought in this video we could talk about a few ways that we could create models in this style, which is really kind of an artistic, different way of looking at 3D modeling. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. And so first off, let's talk about how we can replicate this visual style, and then we can talk about a couple of the things that might come into practice when we're actually modeling these things. So in order to generate the visual style, when we first look at this, notice that what it is it's basically just some surfaces with different colors and the edges turned either off or really low. So in this case, what I want to do is I'm going to jump in here and I'm actually going to model this tent. And so in order to do that, I'm just going to draw a triangle. So I'm just going to draw a line right here. We'll say the tent's going to be maybe 5 feet wide. We'll draw an edge up, maybe another 5 feet, maybe 4 feet, and just fill in this triangle. Well, then we can just pull this triangle back like this in order to generate our tent look. This is one way we can do this. We're going to talk about a simpler way in a minute. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and offset this in a little bit in order to create what might be my tent opening. And notice how you need to go ahead and continue these edges down and erase out this edge right here. But then we're going to do the same thing just by selecting these two edges, which I guess I could have done the first time as well, and just bringing that in a little bit. So then we'll trim off this extra edge. And we're also going to draw an accent surface back here. So I'm just going to draw a line up. I'm going to draw a line across. We'll draw an arc across the surface right here. So basically what I've done is I've created a tent model right here, but it still looks pretty much like a normal SketchUp model, right? We're not getting that stylized look. And so what we can do to change that is we're actually going to come in here and we're going to generate some colors. So I'm going to add a new color right here, and we're just going to call this tent brown. And it may not even be 100% of a brown, but that's okay for what we're doing right here. We'll go ahead and select this, and we're going to apply that to our surface. Well, then we just need to generate some similar colors that go on these other surfaces, right? So we can start by going with that tent brown. And so what we need is we need some colors that are similar, but have a little bit more darkness. So in this case, right, our darkest one is probably going to be about this dark, and it's going to go as kind of a shadow here and a shadow on our opening. We're actually going to use this brown color right here, and then we're going to create a new color, and we're going to lighten it up even more to use on our front right here. So notice what we have is we have a number of different colors on here that kind of contrast, but this still doesn't look like this, right? And the reason why is we need to toggle off our edges in our styles. So if we jump into our styles right here, we want to go to edit. We want to click on this button right here to remove the edges. Well, now that looks a lot closer. So if we look at this, now we've got a very similar tent right here, but it's also a little bit too three-dimensional, right? So what we want to do, because if we go into a straight on view right here, we get a little bit of a tent like this, which actually looks kind of cool, but it's not exactly what we're going for. What we want instead is kind of a side angle of this tent where it looks kind of flat. So to do that, we can turn on parallel projection right here. So when I turn on parallel projection and I rotate a little bit, notice how now this looks pretty flat like this. So what that does is that gives us this cool tent look in here where it looks like this is flat. But what I don't like about this is if I go to front on view, it doesn't really give me what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to select the whole thing, and I'm actually going to rotate it just a little bit like this. So we're going to take this whole thing, we're going to rotate it this way, then we're going to go back into our front on view. We're actually going to rotate that a little bit more from the front on view, which is a little bit difficult, so we'll move up a little bit more. Maybe we'll do another 15 degrees. Then we're going to go to the straight on view right here. So now what we've got is we've got this tent look in here. So it's a three-dimensional tent, but it's got that SketchUp style. Now let's add a color background. And in fact, let's add a color background and a brown ground. So again, we can do this with our styles. So if we come in here, the first thing I want to do is I want to turn my ground on like this. And so now I want to change my sky color to like a darker blue color. So I'm just going to change this to kind of this dark blue color right here. I'm going to change my ground to more of a brown color right here. So we'll say this is probably good enough. So now we have a brown color in here. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save my view by going to View, Animation, Add Scene. I want to save this as a new style. And actually, if you wanted to, you could save this as like SketchUp art style or something like that. But what we've done so far is we've actually generated this using a 3D shape. That's a valid way to do this, but, and I'm going to go ahead and group this, I suspect that they're drawing a lot of these in 2 dimensions and just making them like a FaceMe component. So hold on, I'm going to look back for my trees again. So if I look at these trees, for example, there's really no reason to draw these in 3D. Like you could, but I don't know why, when you could just make them 2D and have them be FaceMe components, and they might actually be doing that with the tent as well. But let's go ahead and draw some trees. So I'm going to rotate out of here. I'm going to move my default model out of the way. And so in this case, what I want to do, and I'm going to turn my axes off as well in the style. But in this case, all I want to do is just draw a rectangle for the base of my tree like this. And remember that we're going to use shades of the same color in here. I'm actually going to toggle back to a regular design style for a second so I get inferencing. But we're going to use shades of the same color in here in order to generate something that might look a little bit more like a shadow. But now we want to draw the base of our tree. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is going to go about 2 feet out. Means I can go 4 feet this way. And we're going to assume this is going to go up to about here. And then we're going to assume the next part of our tree is going to start maybe right here. And this is going to go out maybe 1'6". And remember, we can go in here and erase out this extra geometry. And from here, maybe we'll go out like 1 foot. And this might need to be a little bit taller, so I'm just going to select it and use the scale tool in order to scale it up. You could also select it and move it if you wanted this one below to change like this. But now remember that we're doing the same thing where we're generating a shadow across here by splitting these faces. So now we just need to add colors to this. So we're going to start and we're going to add a green color. So we'll pick a green, maybe something like this. And then we'll add a tree green darker in order to give us that shadow contrast. And then we'll do the same thing down below. And actually I can probably use a couple of these colors that are already in here for that. But now we can go back into the scene view right here. We'll notice how we've got this tree that looks almost exactly like the trees that they've already drawn, like this. Well, then we can take the whole thing, and this is where scenes are helpful. So we could create a new scene with like a working style. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole thing, I'm going to make it a group. I guess we could make it a component because we're going to scale the outside of it, and we'll call it tree. And we're just going to copy a couple of them, and each one of them that we copy, we're just going to scale so that the sizes aren't exactly the same. And if you want to, you can move some of the smaller ones kind of in the background if you decide that you want to do that, so that you're not getting any overlap in here, like this. But now, if we go to our front on view, like this, we can zoom in and out, but now we've got our trees showing up right here. All right, so now let's say that we want to add mountains in the background. Well, if we look at this, they're doing the same thing, right? They've just drawn like a simple flat shape like this, and then split it out in a couple different colors. So what I would do in this situation is just draw some simple shapes in the background. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my working view, and somehow I've overridden that style. So let's go back to regular style. We're going to update this. But in the background, I want to draw a mountain. So I'm just gonna draw a big rectangle like this as kind of a canvas. Let's move this back, move it down, just like this. And remember, it doesn't need to be way back in the background at all. All it really needs to be is something tall enough that it looks like there's mountains. So in this case, for example, I'm gonna draw just a simple mountain on the surface like this. Or maybe a couple mountains. We can go ahead and erase out this extra. But what they've got is they've kind of split this face out a little bit in order to add some contrast. And so in this situation, I want to add a blue that's similar to the blue in the background. So something like this, but a little bit lighter. And what's fun about this is we can actually select this whole surface and scale it up or down. So if it's too big, you can just scale it and adjust it like this. So now we've got our mountain up here. I'm gonna go ahead and triple click on that and make it a group. And we'll go back into our working view. But behind this mountain, we're gonna add a moon. And so with the moon, we want to make sure that when we draw our circle, because I'm just using the circle tool, that we add enough segments that this looks smooth. So in this case, I'm going to make this 64 segments right here. But then I'm just going to offset it out a little bit here. And remember that you can double click in order to offset by the same distance. But now we're just going to go to this front on view right here, and we'll just use these colors. We'll add maybe one more that's a little darker right here, like this. And then finally, we'll just update our scene with this new camera view. All right, so I'm gonna link to a video on this page where we can actually make these two components face me, meaning they would always face the camera inside of your 3D view. But I'd love to hear from you if you'd like to see more tutorials modeling in this style in the comments down below. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.